All right.
I have no idea anymore.
Did that work?
I'm in. Looks like folks are in and just.
Hey, Hal, how you doing?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Yeah, Zoom has, it looks like Zoom has some new default settings, and I have to like manually let people in, which is a total pain in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, I think their business has grown like 100-fold or more. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I'll have to figure out. I'm going to keep.
I was on a DHS call earlier today, and they were talking about the security exposure in Zoom, but you know, for like our use, it's.
Yeah, Zoom has had a very well publicized bunch of security problems where people crash meetings.
Marcus is nodding like, oh, I live in this world.
Indeed.
Marcus, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, good
man.
to see you, Emily.
Hi.
Good to see you, Hal. Hey, everyone.
Look at that background. That's cool.
Marty, nice background. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
It's missing my people.
Yeah. All right, somebody's got a barking dog. You guys remember to mute yourselves if you've got noisy background. Great to see you all, as always. Why don't we start with our wayward son, Marcus. We haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
Your prodigal son.
Yeah, the prodigal son. Even
well, I
worse.
guess we'll find out, I guess. So look, wonderful to see you all. I have been definitely absent, partly because my employer, Google, has been maximizing my writing skills for its purposes, which is fair because they pay me after all. So I think I've written somewhere near 6 articles for Forbes on behalf of the Google marketing team. And also I've been co-opted into helping somebody else's book get finalized and published. So that's meant I haven't had a huge amount of time to devote to mine. But the good news is I think the process of working on these articles and the process of working on this other book has given me some great ideas to really strengthen the core of my book. And I think that next time you see it, it will be very crisp and will definitely hit the mark in a way that the first draft didn't.
That's exciting, man. Yeah, I figured you might be a little busy. You know, a couple of things going on. That's great. So you're finding that the writing of the articles is really helping you.
Yeah, because what tends to happen is when I started writing articles at first, I thought of them as standalone, discrete things, but actually several of them tie back to themes in my book or chapters in my book. And it gave me an opportunity to really expand on a particular topic and make it really crisp and firm. And obviously having like 20 marketing experts and editors look at it also helped. And then I think it's just improved my instincts for how do you deliver something that the audience actually wants and needs.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you have that attitude toward having 20 people edit your manuscript, because I would not have that attitude. It sounds like a disaster, but if it's working for you, that's great. Well, cool. I'm so glad to see you back here. That's excellent.
Thank you.
Is there anything we can help you with, or you sounds like you're just humming along?
I think just humming along, but keen to hear how everybody else is doing.
Good. All right. Who else has something? James dropped a comment in here. What's your experience been writing articles?
Well, I've because I have chapters on contagion and other relevant things, I've decided to publish part of what I was going to say in the book as an article so I can get it out sooner. And so I've been doing that. I've got a first draft that I'm pretty happy with, and I've got a bunch of edits. But I'll tell you, I've done exactly everything wrong. I go back and read what I've already written and, you know, modify it as I go. I skip around from place to place. Like I say, and I don't know whether I'm, you know, undermining good habits and taking on bad habits here. My struggle with and this is, you know, I'm struggling in a way, but it's a good kind of struggle where I feel like I'm pushing into it. With the book, it's a different kind of struggle where I find myself kind of writing around in circles and just kind of fizzing out rather than continuing to push into it. So I don't know. And then also, like I say, I'm worried that I'm just, you know, it's like I'm undermining all my previous discipline and habits that I used on the book. So I wonder if you or Emily could, could speak to that and just, maybe give me another primer on the difference between long form or the, maybe the, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong on long form?
Well, first off, I mean, what is does the experience of writing articles work better for you than what's happening with the book?
Oh yeah, very much so. And the problem is that I can't keep the whole thing in mind on the book. I can on the article. So I know if I'm saying something and I've said it before, I can just jump back to where I've said it before and maybe improve that or copy and paste it into the new spot. There's no way I can keep all that straight with something the length of my book.
I mean, typically, I tend to try to keep the whole picture of the book in my head as I'm editing, but you're not editing yet. You're still vomit drafting.
No,
So,
I've finished the first vomit draft.
oh, okay.
And then I reverse outlined that, and then I made a new outline from that, and I'm about to start basically a new vomit draft from the new outline. But I found on the article that I make an outline and I just keep modifying the outline until it's almost a fill in the blanks template for the article. I think I have, the article's about 5,500 words so far, and I'm hoping to cut it down by a third. But the outline for the article is 11 pages long.
That's not an outline.
No, that's
Yeah,
a pre-write of your article.
Exactly.
We're getting a little in the weeds on your article writing process. Obviously, it's working differently for you. Let's focus on what exact hurdles are you facing in writing or editing your draft right now?
Sorry, I'm getting some audio.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah,
hang on,
I
you
think
guys.
that might
Everybody,
be Marshall's
please
phone that needs to be muted.
be sure to mute. Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
Marshall.
So on the, well, I find myself kind of going with the same process where, I will eventually modify the outline into a template at the rate I'm going. And maybe that'll work for the whole book.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, like I say, I started with a back of envelope outline for the article. Now it's up to 11 pages. The writing is just kind of fleshing out each of those things into a couple of sentences. Maybe I just organically grow by steps from the outline of my book to the whole book. I don't know. Has anyone ever done that? Is that a viable thing?
Let's turn it over to, that's very different from the way that I work. It's very different, as you know, from the way that we teach, but the rest of the group, what's your experience? Has anyone ever done this? No?
Big goose egg.
Okay.
I mean, James, what it really comes down to is that you're in do what works territory. You're gonna have to navigate that yourself and keep in mind just like which habits are helping you progress and which habits are, potentially what happens when we get lost in the weeds is that we feel very productive doing the spinning, but we're not actually getting further forward in our manuscript.
Yeah.
So if that's what you feel is happening, that's when it's time to step back and say, okay, I'm doing something differently than, what they've said works. Let me see how I can pivot from this thing I'm doing that doesn't work to a different strategy.
Okay, well, after the article, I'll be back on another call, but maybe I'll just start over with your process at that point.
Start over at least at editing. Sounds like you probably don't need to start over all the way from the beginning, just to be clear. Yeah.
Okay.
And I tend to think of chapters as articles to some degree. Like they should be their own self-contained subject matter. So if it's too much to hold the entire book in your head, you might do that first make it right edit, really just thinking about them as one chapter at a time and get that chapter complete and whole in itself, and then move on to the next.
Yeah, my content is such spaghetti that it's not clear what goes in what chapter.
That's probably why you're running into issues. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my problem.
Right.
Yeah, you have to make decisions. You have to choose. There will
Yeah.
be no perfect answer. And make choices and write them and see where you are.
Okay. All right. I may have to do vomit draft outline, vomit draft outline, vomit draft outline a few times. You know, I'll do
Okay.
it.
One step at a time.
Yep. All right. Hey, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, James. All right. Who else has something they want to share? What's going on? Doug has been working. Oh, wait, Molly's got a question. Molly, what's up?
Howdy. So I haven't been on in a while. I've kind of gotten sidetracked and haven't gotten much done lately. And I decided to jump back on tonight to kind of give myself a kick in the pants to get things moving again.
Good.
So, yep.
So tell us where you are. Like, where did you pause?
So a big part of my book is interviews. And so I came back, I was in the December cohort. And so I got back and I was really excited and I scheduled a whole bunch of interviews and I did some really, really good ones. I was really excited about that. And I spent, well, there was the holidays, of course, but probably 6 weeks or so doing, a good number of really good interviews. And then when it came time to actually start writing, things at work got super busy at that, right about that same time. And I was like, okay, I'll put it off and start writing next week. And it just never happened. So I've done, over the last 2 months, I've done probably another 2 or 3 more good interviews, but I haven't actually written anything in my vomit draft. So I'm ready to start and I need to start. And so, yeah, that's where I am.
Do you know how you'll use these interviews?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what I did was I took my outline, my table of contents, and I sent it to the people that I was interviewing. And I said to each of them, here's like the list of topics. My book is on women in leadership and the mindsets and the skills needed for women to be effective leaders. And so I sent the list of chapters to each of them and said, in our conversation, pick 2 or 3 that have meant a lot to you in your leadership experience and let's talk about them and tell me stories about them. And so as they talked, I would write down on my table of contents, like which person picked which skill, for example. And so I have my table of contents and I have a column on the side that has like 2 or 3 names next to each one that talks about who talked about that skill or that attribute. And so then as I'm writing it, I can go to the transcript of that person's interview and pull in the quotes of what they said about that thing. So that's my plan, because I know who talked about what now. And so it's just a matter of figuring out how to actually start the writing process, which I'm good at procrastinating.
Yeah, we're all very skilled at that. So have you started writing at all besides doing these interviews? Have you done any writing?
I've started writing a little bit, but not much.
Okay. Can you make time to do 250 words a day?
Probably, yeah. I mean, way back when I was in Austin, I put on my calendar an hour a day and blocked it out on my calendar. And what's been happening is when the alarm goes off, I just turn it off and keep doing what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So I just have to actually stop doing what I was doing and start writing.
Yeah, you have to decide where your priorities are.
Yeah.
I think I talked about this a little last week, but what can be helpful for me in terms of starting the habit itself is also creating some kind of ritual around that habit. And like just something special that you like to do that's small, that sets the stage for, this is my writing time, this is what I'm going to do now. And then it can help retrain your brain to be something that you look forward to instead of something that you dread.
Okay, good suggestion. I like that. So yes, I also set the alarm on my clock to go off every Tuesday at 8:55 to tell me it's time for the call. And the last couple months, I've just been turning it off and going back to doing what I was doing. But tonight I said, nope, I'm going to get on the call and I'm going to get the kick in the pants I need to get this going again.
Good. I'm glad you came. There's no shame, it's a challenge to find, especially now that everything's been turned upside down, to find the time. But you will find if you make if you set yourself a really low bar, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, and just crank 100, 200, 250 words, you'll get there. It's worked for pretty much everybody on this call. Good.
Alrighty.
All right. Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
Marty, you had a question in here. I'm not sure I totally followed you. Apparently Craig didn't.
Well, it just doesn't sound like a question. What you wrote in there makes total sense. What are you contemplating?
Yeah, just does that make sense? Like you go through, and it just felt like when I read it, I didn't go deep enough. Like I wasn't really teaching something new, so I kind of came up with some new ideas. I started to actually watched a few of the writing classes back. It was kind of good to recircle back, and so yeah, so I re-looked at my avatar, rewrote that piece, and then I guess circle back. Do you go back like through all the documents? Should I go back like, the whole why I wrote the book and every chapter, and do you circle everything back?
You mean in terms of your positioning and outline documents?
Yeah.
No, well, I don't know. How do you disagree? I don't think that's necessary usually.
Do what's useful for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Marty, if you want to, I would use those documents as kind of a check, like a touchstone to go back and say, am I still talking to this avatar? Am I serving them? Am I, doing what I said I wanted to do in the book? But I wouldn't feel you need to have some sort of systematic approach where you review everything. That sounds to me, honestly, like avoiding some kind of movement forward.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say, you said you're not teaching your reader something new. Honestly, none of us has anything new to teach, right? We have new ways of teaching. But I wouldn't set yourself a bar that's so high you can't meet it either. Like, be careful about that.
Yeah, and getting clear on your avatar is the first step, right? There's a huge scale of how experienced a potential reader could be with the subject matter you're talking about. And if you're really clear on your avatar, then you know where in that timeline of their development you're trying to speak to. And all you need to do is speak to that. If you're trying to teach people beginning level concepts, you don't also want to throw advanced stuff at them. They won't be able to absorb all of that. So.
Right. Well, the good thing is, I think in talking to some people and kind of doing some research and digging, I think I found it. Like, I think I found what I was looking for. So the good news is we have a conference coming up, so I have to do a keynote. And so I'm able to kind of use that piece as the keynote, which is forcing me to kind of think through that and then run through that concept with people. And it seems to be resonating. So it's making, the writing easier. So
That's great.
Good.
Yeah, words aren't a problem. That's the funny part. Writing every day is easy. It's it's keeping the thread going.
Mm-hmm.
Just stay with it.
Yeah.
All right. Who else? Who wants to know something? Who wants to share something about life and...
I don't know when Kwan's book's coming out.
Yeah, Kwan, when's your book coming out? Come on, man. Cough it up.
Hey everybody, I think they said it looks about July, around there. So yeah, I got off the call with the cover designers. That's exciting. Got off the call with the marketing team. That was exciting. So now it's just relaxing and seeing what happens.
Yeah, so you've experienced, like, when we give you the map and it shows you go up the mountain, you're on the descent part of the mountain now. So
yeah,
it's a good place to be.
I just hopped on because I haven't seen everybody in a while, so I missed you all. So,
Yeah.
That's how we all live now, man, right? It's like...
I know.
And for those of you which is probably most folks who weren't on our Scribe Book School webinar 2 weeks ago, Kwan came in to do a little kind of guest spot with another author. And it was so incredible to see how many people responded from what you had to say. Like, I don't know if you were watching the chat during that, but it was just exploding with so many people who were super inspired by you. It was really cool.
Hey, Quan, I don't mean to interrupt, but could you talk a little bit about your table? You talked about that in the book school. Could you talk to that for the folks on the call here?
Sure. I think Tucker and Philip were just asking like what kept me like grounded in writing, and I shared about this table exercise that we kind of started in prison, and it's like who's at your table. So when I did my writing in the morning, I just imagined myself like, who am I writing for? And I just imagined certain people that was sitting at the table that I'm writing this book for. So of course, yeah, and it's my avatar, but then also is the man that I shot and killed, my father who passed away when I was 13, and then my younger self. That's who I just. So that's usually what I used to try to do to, especially during the difficult parts when I'm writing. That's who I have to remind myself. This is who I'm writing for.
Yeah, it's a really powerful concept because it allows you to, I mean, you can still have an avatar, but you can also acknowledge that you have more than one. That avatar is a complex, right? It's really more than one person. And
yeah, I mean, the avatar is who you're focusing your writing toward, but your table is who you don't want to disappoint, right?
Yeah.
Or like who you want to, I would say like who, I don't know, only disappoint, but I think who you want to get approval from in a weird sense. Like if I was writing it, like when I shared on the call, like when I was writing for, if I was to write the book back during my game days, it would just be like my homeboys sitting at the table, or even my enemies, because that's who I want to impress, or that's who I want to gain approval from, or recognition, or something like that. But now it's a different context where these are people that I feel it's important that I should write it for. So that's the only way I can describe it.
Hey, Jim, who's at your table?
Quan's at my table.
Okay.
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think my family, you know, my children, you know, I mean, I have my avatar, but as far as people at my table, it would be, you know, mostly the people that I love, you know, my children, my family, things like that. But Quan, you always got a seat at my table, brother. We have beverages too. I don't know if you partake, but we have beverages at my table all the time.
Good. That's great. Thanks, Quan. Jim, how's the writing or editing? Where are you again? Remind me. I remember.
So yeah, basically Make It Right. Finished my Vomit draft and started the Make It Right edit. And I did the read through, and you know, I don't know if I'm on the exact, you know, same path as you, Marty, but I definitely, after the Make It Right, I realized that I have some holes that I didn't realize before I read through it. So it's almost like taking a look again at my outline and making sure that I hit. And there's some things that that you're writing, your Vomit draft opens up that you don't realize that are holes that were in your outline to begin with that you didn't realize. So I'm trying to do the Make It Right now and realize where I have things that are missing that I need to add some writing. So I'm really at the beginning of the Make It Right now.
Okay. I think that's really normal to find holes. I mean, Emily, remind me, but I can't think of anybody who's gone through their first pass on the editing and gone, oh, this is great. Like, it's all good. Got nothing to do here.
It seems like
I'm
there's
shipping this
like
sucker off.
a first hopeful day when like they read the first chapter of the intro and they're like, oh, and then they get into it and inevitably find those holes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm struggling a little bit with, do I need to break some things up into more chapters, you know, that kind of thing right now too, a little bit.
So tell me more about that. Like, why are you thinking that? Can you describe like what's going on in your chapters?
I think it goes to that holes in the original outline thing, because I think during the vomit draft piece, I wrote some things that don't necessarily fit into that, but they're important components. They do address the avatar. So I need to figure out, how does it fit in that structure? Do I need to expand the outline to make the chapters a little bit different, kind of thing? So
yeah, you can. There are a couple of ways you can, obviously not having seen your manuscript, I can really only speak in the abstract, but a couple of things you could do is pull them out, put them in your parking lot, just let them sit there, and see what happens. Maybe they deserve a chapter of their own. Maybe they fit somewhere else. Maybe if your structure allows it, they could be sidebars. It just depends on how you're structuring your book. I'm not sure if your book would necessarily fit that way, but you know,
I'm trying to really go back in the Make It Right, going back and focusing on I'm trying to teach this to somebody thing, and look at that and make sure that my, you know, what I have in the Vomit draft really addresses that and get rid of the stuff that doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Good. Great. Iona, what are you drinking? Well, she just froze, I think.
she's probably sleeping.
No, right when I hit her, there goes Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're back.
What happened?
There you are.
There you are.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm drinking Coke. Yeah, just to keep me awake, as
Oh my
Jim was
gosh.
saying.
All right. How's your book coming?
It's doing well. I think I got 7,000 words last week, and that's been pretty consistent for the last since I started again on my James, I can relate because I threw out my first vomit draft, or I outlined on the basis of my first vomit draft. So I'm writing number 2 now, and it's just so much better. I'm giving myself a lot more time to write in the morning, so I'm not rushed so much. And I've been finding I get through a chapter every 2.5 days or so. That's what I've been getting through. So I'm halfway through chapter 7 right now.
That's great. That's fast.
I think I lost everyone.
Oh, we can hear you.
Everyone froze. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and I do all my writing on Focusmate now.
Yeah, that's
good,
great.
accountability. Yeah. I have like a session every morning with a guy called Gwyn in London, and he's like documentary, and so we just commiserate in the morning. It's a nice way to start the day.
Cool. Yeah, I think we might actually share Focusmate more broadly going forward in Guided Author, because it seems to help so many people. So
yeah,
it's been very cool.
I like it a lot.
All right. Thanks for the update.
Yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks for asking.
Craig, did I see in Facebook that where are you? I feel like you just passed a milestone.
Yeah, just finished the vomit draft.
Good for you, man.
Yeah. So I know what Marty, I keep hearing Marty and Jim talk, and I'm like, I don't really want to start the editing because there's going to be like cliffs to jump over. I know it.
So are you in that kind of rest period right now?
Yeah. I printed it all out, put it in a binder, by chapter. So it's ready to do a read through, but I think I'm going to take a week before I do it.
Yeah. Take at least a week. And then, I like working a hard copy. I think it's great. And then sit on your hands and read it all the way through.
Exactly.
Be good. Cool. Okay. Let's see. I was going to call on Doug a while ago and find out. I love the idea that you're using your CrossFit gym for your editing. Tell us more about how that's working.
Yeah, it's working great. You try to find quiet places to do this work, and usually the gym, the music is really loud and people are throwing very heavy things around and things are shaking and crashing and stuff like that. But right now it's closed, and I've always had a kind of we have a tough family situation with my youngest daughter, and so we've kind of always had an understanding with the gym that I've been able to just come and go when it met my needs and met my family's needs. And so at this time I emailed them and said, hey, I need to work on this, and my usual places are failing me because they're all closed. Can I work on this at the gym? And they were like, absolutely, it's closed, don't touch anything. So I sat down put a box at 36 inches and sat down on a push-up bench and edited today. So it worked out well.
That's brilliant. I love that. How's your editing going?
It is, last week I finished Grammarly, and on the call, there was a lot of discussion about Hemingway and not Hemingway or whatever. So I knew that my book still needed, it just doesn't, there's parts of it that are still too complex as I look at the readability scores, at least in my opinion. And so I started reading about Hemingway, and I came across this app, Pro Writing Focus or Pro Writing Aid or something like that. And so I started using it on a trial basis, and it's helping me tremendously. So it's finding new things, and so I'm going through each chapter again with that. It highlights instead of where Grammarly gives you an overall score for me, it's by chapter as far as my readability. It highlights which paragraphs are more challenging. And it also has a couple other features. They talk about sticky sentences, the idea that some sentences are just filled with junk words that don't have any actual meaning. And I'm the king of sticky sentences, apparently. So I'm working on that and making things more clear. So
I'm gonna be so curious to see this manuscript when it comes in. It'll have been through every editorial app you can find, and we'll be really interested to see whether it makes it good or garbage. It probably makes it good.
yeah, AI and radiology is crap, so it probably won't be very good.
So long as it is, you have job security,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you and me both, man. All right, that's great. Doug Foley appears to have as his avatar his book cover, if I'm reading that correctly. Doug, what's going on?
No, that's from the podcast.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, I just had some general questions. I don't know if they need to be answered here, if there's a help document, but I'm almost done. Well, I don't know if it ever feels like I'll ever be done, but I think it's about time to submit my manuscript. But I just didn't know if there was a checklist or anything to make sure that I've done everything I'm supposed to do before turning that in.
Yep.
So I just wasn't sure where that would be or what I need to do next.
Yeah, I was wondering how you got in a book cover before I'd read your manuscript.
No, that's the
explains a lot.
podcast.
Okay.
But
yes.
it might be, I don't know.
If you go to the top of our Facebook page,
yeah,
I've pinned all of our resources.
Okay.
And it includes some things you can look through. So just get in there, and there's a couple of different announcements. I think you can see one, and then you have to click on something that says, I think it says show all, and you can see the other one. Just look at both of those. You'll see some links about how to submit. There's also a big red link, like when you're ready to submit, you click on that, and it's a form, and it tells you like what you need to send us and the format and all of that stuff.
Okay, I'll go through that. I feel like it's not ready, but I feel like I'm just dragging my feet, to be honest. So,
well, Emily, this is
any
your
advice
cue.
on that?
Yeah, this is Emily's cue to give you the should I submit test.
Okay.
Am I that reliable?
Well, you know it really well.
The test is there something I know I can do right now to make my manuscript better? Yes or no?
Two things. So fix those two things and submit it?
Yeah, if you have the skill to fix those two things, you know how, then yes, go fix them. And then if the next time you ask yourself that question, the answer is no, I don't know of anything else I can do right now to make it better, then submit it.
Okay. If I feel like it's absolutely, like, is this very normal for me to absolutely hate my book right now?
Yep.
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to burn this thing and start over.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And it's also
where you should be.
It's also very normal to need to lean on an outside editor to help you see whether there's anything else that needs to be improved in the manuscript, right? Like sometimes we can look at it and we can easily identify the issues or the changes we want to make. And sometimes we just have this like feeling because we're hating the book and we're tired of it. Like, oh, of course it can be better, but like, I just have this vague feeling about it. That's why you can lean on us. We're here to help you with that part. When you
so if it is bad, you'll be able to tell me and then I just go back to work and fix things.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. Okay, time to submit. Oh.
Good.
Feels
fix
good
the
and
two
awful at the
things that
same
you know
time.
how to fix
yes,
first.
I will fix them. It's just a couple quotes, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great, Doug. Good.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super nervous and super excited at the same time.
But now remember though, I mean, I understand being nervous, but in all seriousness, remember, like, we have your back. We're not going to let you publish a bad book. Okay. So send it in.
I appreciate that.
And we'll get you covered.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for showing up. Let's see. Who haven't we heard from? Rich Ezekiel. How are things going for you? Rich is off in the bathroom right now.
Oh, Hal, I have something to share.
Oh, hey, Quan. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, I think I'm so grateful to be part of like Scribe and everything. Like, I was on a call with this other person like 2 weeks ago, and she went through a process of writing, and she said that she had her editors and everything like that, and then her stuff was supposed to be published in June. So she sent me the manuscript, and I read it, and it was pretty awful.
Is this a Scribe project? I'm hoping it's
No, not at all. That's why no.
Good.
No, and I just saw like, yeah, and I just saw like, how did this get past your editors? How did they like? She wasn't clear on who her. When I was reading it, I go, I don't know who the book is for. Like, there was none of that stuff that we already have laid out. Like, that's what I'm looking for when I'm reading it, and it was very unclear. It was a terrible book, and there were still typos in it, and I was fixing that. She's having it, but it's just the content was I don't know. I would have to say awful. So yeah, you guys do a good job over here.
Thanks, Quan. $20 coming your way. No, I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. We are trying to, I mean, we're sincere when we say we really do like helping you guys publish your books, and we want you to be proud of them. It makes us happy to go to work every day. So that's our self-interest in it, I guess. We like to feel good about what we do. Let's see. Rich, there you are.
Hey.
How's it going?
Oh, yeah, I'm back. It's going good. I ended up, with your guys' advice, wrote the introduction. And it's been, I'm trying to figure out how to just kind of get into editing. So the vomit draft, I feel, is, ready to rock and go. The intro took a whole different kind of mindset to develop than writing the vomit draft. It was just a whole different positioning. And I went through your methodology of how you build an introduction. Haven't written the conclusion, but I'm just trying to trying to get off my butt to do the editing. And it's been, with everything else going on around us, but the key thing is it takes another mode of working on the project. And so
how long has it been since you stopped writing?
I wrote the intro last week.
Okay.
So, but it's probably been about 4 or 5 days. And then before the intro, it was probably another 3 days or so.
Yeah. I mean, you can give yourself a few more days if you want, because you do want to come back to it with relatively fresh eyes. Like that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, well, actually, I would ask you, why, setting aside that pause, like, why do you feel you're hesitant or having trouble getting into editing?
It's just, I think my creative energy was really focused on, like, I feel like that was very, like, writing versus editing. Writing seems like it's letting a lot of creative energy out. Editing seems like work. To me, the writing didn't seem like work at all. I mean, to be honest, it was a great experience. It was super creative. So I've got to like figure out how to not procrastinate and actually dig in and know that I have to do it in order for this process to move forward. But maybe I got to figure out a fun way to do it, or I got to figure out, like, maybe I need to print it out. I think it was Craig mentioned he printed it out, so I can actually have it right in front of me. But that's just a lot of paper.
Yeah. So let me make one suggestion, and then I would like to hear what Emily has to say. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so you are correct that there is a shift in mindset for editing, and it's a stumbling block for a lot of people, and that's normal. So that's perfectly normative, what's going on. Print it out, put your pencils down, and just read it. Just read it through. That's the only thing you have to do first. That's all you have to do. And then see where you are. And now that's my setup for Emily. But what would you recommend?
Well, I mean, process-wise, yeah, that's totally it. I think mindset-wise, you're telling yourself a story that editing won't be a creative process. And that couldn't be further from the truth in my experience. So I would To whatever degree you can. I'd set that story aside. Editing for me is really, it's where the heart of the book comes out. And it may, vomiting is kind of fun because it's very freewheeling and it's non-judgmental, and it's like creating just this whole dough, that you're going to be baking your book out of, or whatever. That's a terrible analogy. But like
sourdough is very popular right now. So.
That's right.
So
Hard to
the
get a bread
vomit
machine.
draft it's making your culture, really. It's just making that generative part of the book. And editing is where you get to go read through and you really get to say, like, am I giving the reader what they need, what I need to give them? And am I doing that in an effective way? And when you can approach that with passion, not only does it make the editing more fun, but it also, I think, can help to drive the editing forward and help it be less of a slog. When you remember that what you're looking for in every paragraph that you read is, am I getting at the heart of what I need to say here?
How about some advice on, and maybe rather than, because what I'm concerned about is I dig into it, and I start to edit, I'm going to rip it apart, and won't be able to get through like the first chapter. Just like it's going to take so much time.
What did I just say to you?
How do I limit my tweaking?
What did I just tell you to do? Your first step.
Print it out.
And?
Open a bottle of wine, maybe. I
Sure.
don't know what was.
That's a good second step.
Yeah, good second.
The third
Sorry.
step.
Step 1.5, open the wine. Step 2, read it all the way through without touching it.
Yeah, no
Don't
red pen.
touch
Okay.
it. And here's why. Here's why. Because then you'll know what you have, right? You'll have seen the whole thing. Because otherwise, you're going to get in that first chapter and start screwing around with that and getting lost and working on sentences and going in way too deep. You want to take a high-level view first time through. And I think you were on the call earlier when I think it was Jim who was saying, like, oh, yeah, I realize I have these holes here and I've got to fix these holes. Great. Now you know what to do next. That becomes your make it right edit. You start filling holes. Okay. But it's, I would say print it, open the wine, read it, and then go review all the documents that we've posted in Facebook about, or that you have about how to edit. Because you're obviously welcome to come to these calls or to hit Emily or me up on email or Facebook and say, hey, what do I do next? But it's all documented in there too.
Okay.
Step by step. And that'll keep you from what you're afraid of, which is going down into a hole and tearing it apart and hating it and getting lost, right? We've built a system that if you stick with it, will prevent that from happening.
Got it. Cool. I'll go with printing it out and just reading it without the red pen. I think that's
and it's just like, and then it's just discovery. Like there's no pressure on you to make it good or to do anything. You're just discovering what you've done.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
would comment here. Of course, Emily's gotten some pushback in the chat about people say, no, editing's hard. Editing's a lot of work. Here's the way I think of it, because I agree with Emily on this. I love writing, but I also really love editing. And I would say for me, the difference is writing is the generative part where you're like throwing all the ingredients together and mixing stuff up and making a mess in the kitchen. It's a lot of fun. Editing is the craft. Editing is making your loaf of bread beautiful. It's like putting those really nice little slices on it, and so it rises up and looks cool, giving it the egg wash and all of those wonderful things. So it's,
Have you been baking, Hal?
I have. I've been making challah. But there is yeast is really hard to find right now too. If anybody has any yeast, I'll give you my email or my mailing address. It's a little contraband yeast going around in the mails. You totally got me off track.
You were saying that editing is the craft and the art.
It's the craft of it. And I love that. And if you have that frame and you think about what you're doing is your authors, this is your craft, is making your book beautiful and effective for your reader in the same way you would make a beautiful meal. Perhaps that would be helpful to some of you who find it work. So yes, it's work in a sense, but it's also a craft that you can be good at.
Yeah, it's totally where you make the beauty of the book. And when you get caught up in the slog and the like self-berating talk of, I can't believe I wrote this piece of shit, which I know it happens to all of us. That's what just kills the whole process, right? A lot of us hate editing because we get stuck and frustrated. And I think the more that you can continue to suspend your self-judgment, because editing does require judgment. You have to be able to judge the work that was created. But the more that you can like distance yourself from this is my creation and think of it more as like, this is now the creation that I'm honing and beautifying and working with, the easier it is. I don't know if that was helpful at all.
I'm going to see if I can extend the metaphor. If you're having a dinner party and the kitchen's a disaster, but you could just close the door on the kitchen and you bring this beautiful dish out to the table, everybody's like, oh my God, it's gorgeous. You know, what a wonderful dinner. That's what, so what if it's a shit show back in the kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, if your goal is to bring that beautiful thing out, then you can let all that stuff go.
Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic says this thing about how the Greeks always thought that genius was not a thing that you had inherently in yourself. Genius it's like this little demon that comes to either visit you or doesn't visit you. And so if you're creating work that is inspired and valuable, it's because the genius is visiting you. So as much as you can, like, think about that manuscript as being something that was created by the genius, not something that you still own. And if you can just look at it and be like, oh yeah, look at this mess we made together. And I'm going to make it more beautiful now. At least that's what goes on in my head when I edit, and I love editing. So.
Yeah. All right. That was our rant on editing. We're going to make you guys like editing, whether you want to or not.
We've tried so hard to make you like editing for so long. We need some new skills.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, is Kelly still here? Yeah, Kelly, I wanted to hear how things were going for you.
Pretty well. Thanks for asking. I finished my vomit draft a week before last.
Great.
And so I took last week off, and then now I've started to assemble it. I haven't read it through, but I've created all these different chapters in Google Docs, and it's a little messy, but I'm feeling really good about it actually right now. I'm feeling very peaceful about it. I ultimately will have a question for you guys about something I heard in book school a couple of weeks ago. In the memoir section about shining light in dark places. And so my book is, working title is The Lonely Leader, part memoir, part, how to not be a lonely leader. And I'm wondering how deep to go in sharing my own personal story in different ways, because it's definitely shaped me. So anyway, maybe I'll just reach out to you when I get this cleaned up a little better to see how deep to go around that. But I was just intrigued by that, just by that idea, shining light in dark places.
Yeah.
I don't think we can let that soft pitch go by, Emily.
Yeah. What is your sense of how deep to go with your own personal material?
Well, I remember Tucker saying when I was in Austin, saying, I want to know what it's like to, what you're thinking about when you lie in bed. Like he was like really like digging into some of those, really intimate details. And so it's things like that. I mean, yeah, it's about sex, different things.
What's your resistance to putting that in?
Probably embarrassment, but I think it can help people too. So like I would like to say things that I wish I had learned from somebody else, like that. I think that could be helpful.
Yeah.
So I think I'm answering my own question with your help.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling very, not like my whole life is riding on this book, which is the pressure that I was putting on myself before. And also feeling like when I show up, there's some kind of unseen help that shows up as well. And so, I think part of being the lonely leader is feeling like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and it's all on you. And so part of that, letting go of that idea because it's not true, then I think that has helped a lot. So I'm feeling good. Thanks, guys. And then I wanted to say to Molly, you say you have it on your calendar to come here, each Tuesday night, and then you say, "No, I'll pass." And I know how you feel because every Tuesday night I think, "Oh, I think I'll skip this one. I'm really tired, and I'll get it next week." And I always show up, and I'm so glad that I did. Like every time, I always tell my husband, "That was awesome. I'm so glad, I went." So I thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate the endorsement. It's endorsement night here at Scribe.
Oh, let me say something too about FocusMate. Iona, I love that you're having such success with it. And Hal, if you're going to check into promoting it more widely in the group, I think you can create a Scribe group in FocusMate.
Spree pointed this out. Yeah.
Okay.
We do know about that. Thank you. I don't think we've done anything on it, but yeah, it's on our radar for sure.
Okay, great.
Hey, Kelly, one thing from the book school along the lines of what you were talking about, I think it was Philip McNernan that said that our greatest gifts lie next to our deepest wounds. That
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really got a lot out of Philip and Quan as well. I thought they were just so powerful. Yeah, thank you for that, Jim.
Yeah, Philip's a treat. Those of you who are, well, I know Tucker mentions this book in Austin, but his book, One Last Talk, is a great book and really, really useful if you're in the memoir game in any way, and just a great book in general. So speaking of a spree, I see you over there. Want to tell us what you're learning, how things are going?
Shit.
Well, you just did a big thing, right? You started teaching your material.
I did. Yeah. So no, well, I'm starting it. Yeah. So
cool.
I used FocusMate to gain the focus to get through what the feedback people had given me, which for whatever reason I was really resistant to. Something that's really sat with me is something you said, Emily, when you said, yeah, it's natural that you're experiencing so much resistance because it's that important to you. So I've been sitting with that kind of awareness a lot, to really tune in wherever I'm not moving forward. So anyway, I used FocusMate to get through that. And then what I discovered is that my book was unclear. Like it didn't hand off someone how to do something, that I was missing a lot of core components. And what I got from the virtual training, which was so cool, bringing it back to the foundations, was for fun, just to keep it lighthearted for myself. I was just inputting like podcast stuff in like the data sheets or whatever. And no, I'm not switching. I was just doing it so I didn't have anything heavy. And I noticed how much more fluid that felt. And then when Tucker said that there was that to teach, I had forgotten that to teach is like a great way to figure out the basics. And I'd never taught anyone how to create experience. I've just done them. And so I posted on all my social networks, and I don't know what the current count is, but I think it's somewhere like 120 something leads of people who want to learn it. And so now I'm setting that up. I'll probably teach it through Zoom. I'll simulate whatever I do with my podcasting and do it exactly as I did my podcasting thing, where the first one I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just learning it, and I'll let everybody know that, I'm doing the best I can to share the information. But from that, it will probably be like a 2-day thing. My podcast things are a 1-month thing. But since this is just for me, the sole purpose of to write a clearer book, I'm going to see if I can do 2 days. And then hopefully that will give me the insights of what I'm missing. But it was really, really interesting, the stuff that I was missing. Like some people, it's funny because I remember when I was in Austin, there's a list of like 100 activities, and Tucker said to include it. And I felt like that's weird. Like, this is so easy. Everybody knows this. He's like, no, like just because he said that thing, just because you know it, it's because you're an expert. That's what makes you an expert, that it's easy for you. And that thing that he like made me include is the one thing that all of the readers were like, oh my God, this is gold.
I'm like, what? This is so crazy. And so it was interesting to see the commonalities and also the discrepancies. Like, they didn't know if I was tackling the concept of creating an experience from like a mental standpoint or a logistical standpoint. And they said from like a logistical standpoint, like it wasn't as interesting. It just felt like being an event organizer, and they weren't understanding if that's what I was going after, if I was going after like the mentality of it. And they said that I was missing a lot of, they didn't say it in this way, I just equate it because of what I've learned from you guys, that I was missing a lot of stories. And so they felt like they didn't really understand how it related to them, and they would have appreciated more stories. Yeah, I mean, there was just so much great feedback in there, but the feedback told me that my book isn't where it needs to be in order to help people. And so I'm going to do this teaching thing to help people.
That should give you the discipline to really be clear on what you know and what you don't, how you communicate it. I mean, Tucker talks about this a lot. Like he knew how to write books, but he didn't know how to teach books when we started Guided Author. Guided Authors really, the act of teaching has taught him how to communicate about how to write books. So you'll have the same experience.
And I think my favorite part about, and this is my favorite, because when I first started teaching podcasting, I just kind of did it as a favor to the community. I didn't actually think I would like it. I thought it'd be like a drag, and I loved it. And what I loved about it is how much it was serving them in their life. And it was interesting to discover that. And so what I'm most excited about is not even gaining the clarity that I'll be able to implement into my book on experiences, but it's going to be to discover like what component of this is going to be the most meaningful for all these people. Because I have no idea. I mean, I know what has been meaningful for me, but maybe there's something entirely different that I'll discover when I teach it.
Yeah, good. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Thanks for caring.
Of course. Absolutely.
Just add something, Hal, on that point that Scribe was raising.
Please.
Briefly. This idea of needing to introduce your personal stories was really, for me, came to life when, for one of these articles that I wrote for Google, the editors came back and said, there's nothing personal in here. We understand all of this, but like, how did you get here? What's your personal journey? And I said, well, who cares about my personal journey? And they said, no, go back. We want to hear about your career, the journey that you went through and you first delivered a major piece of technology like this. So having then written that article, I thought it was kind of ridiculous. And I said to my wife, this is crazy. It's kind of all about me and what I was going through. We then published it, and we had something like 30,000 people read it within the first couple of days. And there was so much interest from customers that they actually, Google then created an event based on that specific article. And I met around 25 senior executives, and they were all interested in the story. So I think sometimes we can underestimate how powerful our personal journeys are when trying to help other people who are facing similar challenges.
Definitely. Hal's become an expert in how much I underestimate and undervalue myself. He has like a master's in it at this point.
Oh, Esprit, you give me too much credit. Cool. Thank you, Marcus. That's really, really great, great piece of like a proof point, I would say. Hey, before we go, we've got a couple minutes left. Benny, did I see a hand go up at some point? Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective, Hal. Thank you. So I'm obviously spending a lot more time on the book. I'm approaching each chapter now as if it was a keynote speech. So each point of each chapter being able to be delivered as a standalone piece of content. And I'm finding that really useful to get all of my points, completely rounded and also linking into each other. Is this the right way of thinking? Is it the wrong way of thinking? Do you have any advice on this?
Hang on, I'm just writing something down. So have I ever told you that something was the wrong way? I think maybe I've done that once or twice, but
A couple of times.
Okay. Our golden rule, right? Is like, do what works for you. If that's helping you with your organization, which I know is your big challenge, and it's a discipline and a frame that's useful, do it. I mean, Emily,
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm still curious because I know you've constructed and deconstructed and reconstructed your book a few different times. I'm curious when the point will be that you let your structure stick. So I'm with you in particular, I'm always on the lookout for like, is that a genuine benefit, or is this like another iteration because the first just didn't feel good enough? But as a general strategy, yeah, absolutely. I think that's even one of the frames we teach in the workshop is like, if you were to walk through a multi-day teaching experience, like a series of keynote talks, what would each day be? And that's a great way to structure a book.
Yeah, I just found that there were too many points in each chapter. So,
so it's helping you simplify.
Split them all out, categorize them as parts, and I think it's starting to flow. So the structure question, it's getting close, but listening to you guys and all your stories and all of your advice, that really helps. So thanks everybody.
Great. Good. Yeah. And knowing what I know about your book, parts and then chapters within parts totally makes sense. That kind of nesting quality. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I hear you, Benny. I'm working on a project right now where it feels like every point we want to make in the book, we want to make first, which can't be done, right? So like, how do you figure out a nesting structure then that makes sense?
One thing you might be able to shed some light on is, because my book is not a step-by-step hierarchy model, it's a expanding, growing model. Every point links to every other point.
Yeah.
So every part of the book links to every other part of the book. How do I even approach that?
So I'll tell you what I'm doing in this particular project I'm working on, which is essentially telling the reader that up front, saying, look, like these are like the 5 pillars of this book, and you'll see them come up again and again and again. And the truth is, I want to talk about all of them at once, and I can't. I have to create a linear structure for you here. So you just sort of really kind of confess to your reader what you're doing and say, I will try to keep you oriented by pointing out like this is connected to that. And remember, I said we'd talk about this, or I'll bring something up and promise you I'll do it in the next chapter. And just tell them what you're going to do. You kind of lay out a map, and then you refer back to that as you're going along, and just be honest. I'll be frank, like I'm trying that right now. I'm pretty confident that it's going to work. Because of the tone that this author uses is a very conversational, almost confessional tone. So it works really well for him. I think you might have a more professional tone, which might be trickier. But that's what I'm trying on this one. And I think I can get away with it because of the way this guy writes.
Okay. So
yeah, something like that.
And don't be afraid to have the book refer to itself. Like if you're saying, we're going to combine these concepts, but you're not going to learn about this concept until chapter X. Totally fine to use that. It feels clunky when you're writing it, but it's totally fine to use that to give the reader a roadmap of where they're headed at each step, and to let them know when something bigger is coming on the line for them.
Rockin'.
Front about that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Another perfectly good hour wasted. Nice. Nice to see all of you as always, and to hear about your progress. You guys keep up the good work, and we'll see you next week.
Go bake bread.
Yeah. Send me some
bread.
yeast.
Sourdough's the answer. Okay, keep safe and well, everyone.
Bye.